I've been privileged to see inside dozens, if not over 100 companies in the last about 10 years. I've been a recruiter. We recruit in construction. A lot of the lessons I've learned are not exclusive to construction, so I'm not framing this as just a construction video, but I've seen inside a lot of companies and I've learned a lot about retention. Retention from running my own business and retention from seeing people hired, being a recruiter and going into organizations and helping people improve their life and leave that organization to go to somewhere better. I feel that retention is a little bit of a corporate buzzword that doesn't get quite enough attention as much as it deserves, because underneath that corporate buzzword is just a layers upon layers of opportunity for business owners and leaders to improve their organizations by using retention as a goal, as a lens. And I'd like to share with you what I've learned and how I do this and maybe the journey I'm on, so that you can help yourself. So really deep significance in this word retention. And here's why. Companies and teams that cannot retain their employees cannot grow. They can't grow. There's too much friction. There's too much expense. There's too much cost if you are having a significant amount of turnover for the people that you are hiring. This has a particularly nasty effect on most businesses that are in the small to medium size, because they never get out of this vicious cycle of trying to go to the next level in their business, but the people aren't staying long enough to be a part of that process of going to the next level. Because, we all know that your business is only as good as your people, right? And so if these people are coming in and they're not getting deeply seasoned and maturing in the business and they're turning over, that is progress that the business is not only not making, but it's actually going backwards. And then I see this other vicious cycle where the business owner, wants to create a high impact organization, and they cannot get out of the weeds because when they hire these people, there's turnover, there's chaos, there's cost. And eventually the business owner stops hiring. It's like they put their hand on the stove too many times and they resign themselves to constantly working on the business and in the business. And usually it's more in the business than on the business. And these types of business owners often have very stressful lives. Running a business is not as rewarding as it should be in many ways. The organizations aren't as organized, as happy, as profitable. And there's all sorts of deleterious consequences from that. So I'm really going to try to explain how I perceive retention, and I'm managing it in my own business. What I've seen in about 100 other businesses that I've worked with. So let's talk about the importance of retention. Why make a video about this? Why should you spend a few minutes watching this? Turnover is costly. There's all sorts of questionable statistics about what retention or turnover cost an organization. I've been in this for a while. I've seen a lot of these surveys. I'm not going to quote any of them. I don't understand where they're getting their data or how they're quantifying this stuff, but I will agree it's incredibly expensive. It's more expensive than people realize, and it's a particularly sneaky kind of expense because it's not a line item, right? You don't see turnover expenses like employee recruiting, employee training, the interviewing cost, the onboarding, the customer, impact, maybe the customer turnover from your retention issues. You don't see those things on your P&L. And so it's very easy for a lot of business owners to just, I don't know if they're ignoring them, but they're just not aware of it, right? It's like drag. It's like unseen friction on an organization. And it's sapping morale, it's sapping profit, it's sapping a sense of momentum and success in the business. So it's really, really important to not have bad turnover. We'll get into more what good turnover is. So it's time consuming, customers are going to be impacted, you're going to lose business momentum, vicious cycle of chaos in a business that can be tough to get out of. And so what I want to cast a vision for is what it looks like to hire well, to retain people and to grow your organization strategically and sustainably. And I just see, I just see a lot of leaders taking this topic for granted, and oftentimes making excuses when they have retention, especially middle managers. I see this a lot where you'll have turnover in an organization. And as a recruiter, I get to see kind of both sides of the story a bit. And oftentimes what I see is leaders failing to hold middle managers or even themselves, senior managers, accountable for that turnover. Either whether it's from a mishire or from mishandling in the management process. So I want to see organizations take more responsibility for their turnover so that they can improve it. What impacts retention? I got a big list here. First, it's you got to hire well, right? So retention is built upon a foundation of good decisions. So that first decision is the interview process and the decision to hire someone, right? And if you've started off by having a shoddy job description that doesn't really speak to the pain point in the business, it doesn't speak to the key results that this particular employee is supposed to achieve. If the interview process is shallow, if the candidate is not informed of the challenges that they will encounter and be expected to overcome, if the assessment process from the company is disorganized, undisciplined, weak, and that person gets into the organization, well, in some sense, turnover is assured, right? And oftentimes what happens is, these leaders, they say, well, the person who showed up was not the person who interviewed. From their perspective, this is probably true. I mean, nobody hires somebody that they think is going to be a failure, right? But the reality is, when we hire, we make a commitment that we think this person's going to be a fit. We also make a commitment to them to help them be successful. And when we make excuses like that, we're shortchanging ourselves and we're shortchanging the employee, because the responsibility for retention is really on the leader, right? The responsibility for hiring well is on the leader. It's on the person who's interviewing. So that rationalization doesn't really fly far if you really want to have a high performance organization. So you've got to really know, what is the job? What's the problem that's being solved? And what I mean by that is, it's not like, hey, we need to hire another project manager, or we need to hire another superintendent. It's looking with a very high level of resolution at what is the pain point in the business. Is it Tom is overworked, and so we need another project manager to come in and support Tom? And the success criteria for this role is going to be Tom's success at having a good pace of work, less stress, and good production, right? And so obviously that candidate's going to need to interview with Tom, right? And they're going to need to decide if they can make that happen. Too often we're, now with AI, I see this more too, where we just pull a list of, I just need a project manager. What are project manager responsibilities? It's generic. It's not tuned to the role. It's not tuned to the challenges. It's not high resolution. And so the candidate doesn't really know what they're getting into. The company hasn't really been up front, maybe not on purpose, but there's ambiguity, and, surprises are rarely good things in hiring. The goal really should be to share what's really going on in the organization and be really carefully assessing and vetting with a skilled and disciplined interview team through a thorough process, and hire people who are really committed to being successful long-term. And this is, by the way, it's a lot of work. Really good interviewing is not a fast process, no matter what people tell you on LinkedIn. That should only take a few hours. That boggles my mind when you consider that you're going to give somebody millions of dollars of responsibility and you're going to make a decision in a couple of hours. But we can talk about more of that in another video. So, if you rush to fill an open position, if you're skimming the resumes, if you're conducting short interviews and you're, you're not looking enough at culture fit, you're not looking at enough of a technical fit and their ability to perform the key function, produce the key accountability, the KPI, whatever you want to call it, you're looking for a problem. Conversely, take the time, define key responsibilities, define the key candidate profile, help the candidate recognize that they are fit for the job, right? The candidate needs to believe that. They need to believe that this problem is worth their time and their attention. This team is worth joining. This leader is worth following. And that takes work, but those people tend to integrate smoothly with the team. I would also note that a lot of job descriptions are just unhelpful. You know, they're written more from a compliance standpoint. They're generic. You know, think about what it means to use your job description as a performance management tool. You know, if you look at that job description in the next performance review, does that job description articulate the real performance factors for that individual that would help them know whether or not they're going to have a good, medium, or bad performance review? And I would say 95% of the job descriptions I see, at least in construction recruiting, do not meet that qualification. You also need to be honest about where your business is at, where you are at as a leader, where the team's at, the challenges that you're facing, and you have to show them what they're up against to create informed commitment. And what I mean is informed commitment is, in a sense, loyalty, right? And a lot of hiring authorities think that they want to hire people with loyalty. They think that loyalty is an attribute of an individual, and that, you know, maybe if they're working with a recruiter, the recruiter is going to go out and find loyal people. But the fact is that leaders are the only people who can cultivate loyalty. Loyalty is not endowed. It is not just given. It's like trust. It has to be developed. It has to be respected, curated. And so to get that loyalty and that informed commitment, you've got to be upfront with the candidate in the interview process about, you know, what they're up against, and give them a reason why they might not want the job. This can really help companies and the candidates get past the interview veneer stage where, you know, they're both meeting each other. And I've sat in on a lot of interviews and everybody is a bit insecure. They're a bit nervous. They want to be perceived well. They haven't gotten a read on each other yet. And so everybody's playing the status game, and they're not really being authentic with one another about what they're looking for, about what they're not looking for. And they're just trying to feel things out. And that's a normal stage of an interview. But as a leader, you should be helping the candidate to get through that stage as quickly as possible by showing them that the interview process is not just a process of looking good, right? Go first, be a leader, show them what you're struggling with, what your challenges are, ask them what they're struggling with, what their challenges are, make it a safe space for them to be real with you about what's really going on in their life and what their real goals are and where they're really successful, what their passions and ambitions are, because that's the person that you really need to get to know. And if you struggle to do this, that's okay. You know, I think every leader struggles with this, but this is what it means to be on the journey towards being authentic, and to be the type of person, but type of leader who can cultivate pretty insane levels of loyalty and commitment from the team, because you're a real one and you're helping them be a real one, and people want to be real. Another factor to retention is compensation. I got to tell you, a lot of companies ask us about, you know, pay ranges, what they should pay, what are the benchmarks, salary surveys, and you know, I've got a little bit of a contrarian take on these things. I don't think you should be relying on salary surveys at all. I think you should try to pay your people as much as possible. And I don't mean empty your bank account. A sinking ship doesn't do the passengers any good. I think you should be focused on determining what that person's real financial value is to the organization, showing them that financial value, aligning their compensation to that financial value, and within that construct, paying them as much as possible within that construct, and giving them as much authority over their compensation as you possibly can. Oftentimes, I get a sense when companies ask for pay ranges, what they're really doing is trying to figure out the lowest investment way to get the highest chance of retention. And while I can appreciate that goal, I think it's a misguided aim to do this with salary surveys, because the data is just, it's not there. If you go to where they have these salary surveys, like salary.com or Glassdoor, PayScale, and you look at the actual data they have to work with, it is so thin and useless. And there are so many variations within industries, within companies, just because they've got, so-called project manager salaries. I mean, there are a million different ways companies define what a project manager is. Those are very different jobs. They've got very different benefits packages. They've got very different cultures. They've got very different bonus structures. And so we're looking at this one salary number, and frankly, it's just not trustworthy. I wouldn't trust it. And even as a recruiter, people say, well, you see more, what's going on in the industry with comp, what's going on with comp, what should we pay? And I say, well, I see glimpses of comp. I see the situations where I'm involved in compensation negotiation, but those are all very specific situations, a specific person, a specific skill set, specific job, a specific problem, a specific opportunity for the company to make a specific amount of money, a specific time in the market, right? Like that can change from day to day. So compensation's a complicated thing. And the more you can align your compensation to the performance of the candidate, I think the more reasonable it is to expect to retain that person. Because the question is, can another leader come in and value your employee more than you are valuing your employee? And this gets to, how efficient does your business run? How generous are you with compensation? How aligned is it to their performance? And you gotta know that there's always another business out there that's looking at a project and can justify paying someone 20% more or whatever it is, maybe even in the short term, just to get the person and secure that project. This happens all the time in construction. A candidate who is just paid based on some sort of pay scale and, here's the pay band, they're going to be pretty attracted to that. But if you give somebody real clear path on how they can just make 20% more in an organization they already know, with a leader they already know and hopefully respect, you're going to be much better armored against those kind of, competitive hiring situations. And I think it's just a more moral way to do business, frankly. To have a mindset of, this is how we pay our people as much as possible, while making sure that the business is safe, it's protected. We don't have employee pay and company performance at odds with one another. Aligned compensation. You've got to motivate your top performing people by giving them the opportunity to make more based on that performance. And this is just one other facet of leadership where you get more of what you encourage, right? So if you're recognizing performance with compensation, bonuses, salary, what have you, you're going to do a better job retaining people. This just gets down to pay philosophy. I think the most sophisticated pay philosophy is tying performance to comp. However, I will acknowledge this isn't easy, right? Oftentimes you have a whole project of people, a team of people working on a large project, and it's difficult to quantify that specific person's financial contribution to that project. But the truth is that person does have a financial contribution to that project. And, if you look at the revenue produced by that project or the sale or whatever it is, and you ascribe a certain amount of credit, and you have to study this problem to really understand it, but a certain amount of credit for the various roles, and you're willing to flex that credit based on, how skilled the person is, and you're really paying attention, I think you can do it. You can, project engineers, project managers, superintendents, you can tie them into the financial performance of the project. One of the biggest factors in retaining an employee is the relationship between the employee and their immediate supervisor, the leader. And a couple of points with this. One is there's an opportunity in a lot of businesses for the middle management leader to be seriously invested in from a leadership standpoint. These people they're the NCOs, they are the front line. And if they got the job because they're good at the job and not because they're a skilled navigator of the human landscape if they're not good with working with people, of being likable, of being a visionary, of being helpful to their subordinates, then there's a real risk factor because people quit their boss, right? I mean, that's just it. People quit their boss. Recognizing that a lot of retention has to do with the relationship. And I've really seen this in my own business where my ability to work with people I've got a good relationship with through performance issues is much, much better than if I have a challenging relationship and there's performance issues. And a lot of it comes down to trust. It comes down to the relationship. And so, one of the ways that as a leader you can really intentionally invest in this is meet intentionally one-on-one in a safe place privately with people that are on your team. And there's a couple of good reasons to do that. One is you need to know what's going on in their life, how they're doing, right? You need to know this because your job is to support them. Your job is to support their success. And you can't support them if you don't know what's going on with them professionally and personally. They need to feel that support from their leadership. You need to know if there's friction or there's rubbing points somewhere in their work, right? Too often, my firm recruits people who are just disconnected from their leadership. Their leadership doesn't know that the commute is too painful for them. They don't know that that team member is too low performing and they're sick of working with them. They don't know that the customer is arrogant and rude and the person's fed up. And so because they don't know those things, they can't do anything about those things. They can't empathize with the person. They can't solve the problem and the person leaves. And it is so basic, but meet with your people, meet with them, listen to them, and help them solve their problems. And this is really where, I think the concept of turning your org chart upside down comes into a focus, is because conventionally the org chart is demonstrated as a pyramid here, and you've got leadership and sub-leadership and sub-leadership, and then finally the line staff. But the reality of a high performance organization is it's really like this, where you've got line staff who are the ones getting the work done. They are meeting with the customers. They are solving the problems. Their smile matters to people so much. Though they are the success of your business. And so every person under the line staff is responsible for supporting the success of the line staff. And so if you think about your responsibility at some point in this leadership hierarchy, you realize your responsibility is to these people in this org chart. You have to be there for them. And you can't do that if you don't know what's going on in their life. If you're taking your people for granted, if they're getting annual reviews, if they're getting feedback from you very infrequently, if they're not feeling loved, if they're not feeling related to, respected, appreciated, they're going to leave. And I guess this gets us to another point, is like, what do we all really want in work? You can break that down into a lot of things: compensation and, ambition, projects, success, right? But I think it really comes down to, we all want to be loved. We're all human. And, we've got a lot of ways of expressing this, but at each of our cores, and I'm just saying this, having talked to thousands upon thousands of candidates and worked inside, maybe 100+ companies, we just want to be loved. We want to be valuable. We want to matter. And your ability as a leader to make the people who work for you matter is super critical. And the fact is, do they work for you? 100%. Do you work for them? 100%. Do you recognize that you work for them? Do you recognize that as a leader, they can fire you? That's what it means when they quit. You're getting fired, right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's always for bad reasons, but just recognize the duality of service here. They are not there to just serve the company. The company also serves them. And when that relationship and alignment falls out of balance for them, they leave. So meet with your people one-on-one and pay very close attention to them getting what they want right? As a human being, as a professional, you're there to help them be successful. I think it's incredibly valuable to have leaders who can meet people where they're at, can treat each individual as the individual that they're at. And those people create incredible organizations. And some of the characteristics of those people, those leaders, are their humility, their authenticity, their vulnerability. These are not people who just have a strong face for every situation. These are people who understand the relationship between what they think is their rational thought and their emotions. And they understand that we are all emotional creatures. We are all strong in certain ways. We are all weak in certain ways. None of us are complete, perfect human beings. We all have trauma. We all have disappointments. And working together is an opportunity to complement the strengths, to shore up the weaknesses, and meet people where they're at. And so this type of leader is very skilled at navigating that human landscape, the nuances, right? It's the process of understanding who people are, what they want, and how do I get what the business needs at the same time while providing what the person needs. People who are most successful at that are the most successful leaders. Another big factor is the organization's ability to show a great amount of respect and flexibility to work life. And I mean this, with the advent of remote work, not all businesses can do this, but to the degree that you can, show as much flexibility as you can for people when they need to do stuff during work hours. And I recognize that sometimes people are going to take advantage of this. And if they do, you got to deal with that. I think you got to set some expectations around performance management to make sure that people are not setting personal priorities and professional priorities at odds with one another. But to the degree that you can respect people's personal lives, give that flexibility, let them, do the things they need to personally do during the day, assuming the job gets done, that's a big, big advantage. And these leaders who are stuck on the model of, everything's got to be in the office, at the desk, it's 8 to 5, I just categorically, they're missing out. They're missing out on talent. They're missing out on opportunity to build loyalty, and make employees enthusiastic about working at the organization. Next thing to talk about is meaningful work and impact. I mentioned earlier that people want to matter. We want to be loved. And how we assess our impact and the meaningfulness of the work that we're doing is by the feedback that our coworkers give us, our boss gives us, our customers give us. And as a leader, I advise you to be just highly aware of the power of showing people the impact that they're having positively on other people's lives, and how fundamentally your company goal, your company mission perhaps, should be really focused around improving people's lives. And you do that in a specific way, right? You build buildings, you make widgets, you sell a service or product. But at the end of the day, if you boil it all down, right, what you're doing is improving people's lives. And that is a way that these people that are working for you, they matter. And reflecting that back to them and helping them feel the meaningfulness in their work is incredibly important. Just think about the value of life. We all have one life to live. That person, that team of people, they are investing some fraction of their precious life with you. And your job as a leader is to maximize what they can get out of that process. And so part of that is meaning. Part of that is helping them understand the relationship between what they do and how it impacts people's lives. Your life, their coworkers' lives, and your customers. I think this is a huge opportunity for improvement in a lot of companies, that they see themselves as, we make a widget, we you build a building, we do all these things. But at the end of the day, what you really do is you serve other people. Leaders who get that and can communicate that, have a language for communicating that to the team about how they're improving lives. I think they've got an advantage that's rooted in, core fundamental human psychology. A big factor to all of this is, some people are calling it a generational difference, and I get why they say that, right? When they talk about tenure, when we talk about turnover, it's hard to not talk about tenure. It's like, well, people aren't really staying in jobs. It's like no loyalty. Nobody wants to work anymore. And frankly, I don't buy it. I'm a millennial. I've been a recruiter for about a dozen years. I don't really buy that there's dramatic differences in the generations. The base human psychology, I think there are dramatic differences in the technology that is driving very different behavior. But if you would have taken any of the previous generations and put them, in our time with our technology, I think we'd see a lot of the same behavior. Just my opinion, could be wrong. Maybe share your opinion in the comments. But you can go on Indeed and you can apply to 100 jobs in the next hour. That is a new thing for humanity. And it is giving employees a tremendous amount of mobility. And I think it's a real factor for leaders who are not optimizing for some of the categories we're discussing here. And because they're not optimizing, people come and they go, and the leader doesn't really understand why. And so, once again, they displace that responsibility and that ownership for that retention to the employees. And it's a generational problem. It's like, well, maybe there's differences in the generation. Maybe there are. But the fact is, I think employers, frankly, got away with stuff that wasn't good back in the day because employees just didn't have as much mobility. And I see that shifting, I think, in some really good ways where employees don't have to put up with it anymore. Useless, dead-end, low-paying job, leave. You can go do something better for yourself. And so leaders who are used to being abusive, disrespecting their people, being anti-competitive, and I mean having agreements with other companies that, if they work for this company, they can't work for this company. I think those days are waning, if not over. And now we really need to think about how do we maximize the human value, which as a recruiter and as a enthusiast for the importance and nobility of humanity, I'm pretty excited about. One other factor to this mobility point is the degree to which people feel like they can optimize their job for themselves as they get to know themselves better, as they grow, as they understand the organization better. Super critical. And I'll tell you from experience, organizations that I would say not even allow it, but encourage it, but foster it, they tend to build these super high value employees who are custom fit into a very special role. These people are incredibly hard to replace because they're so high performing, and their retention is incredible. And oftentimes, if we go back to the cost of turnover, chaos, team can't build momentum. You look at organizations who do this, and they're constantly looking at the combination of what does the business need or what does this person need, and you put those two things together. Those organizations are powerhouses. They retain people. The people get really good, and it's hard for employees to find an organization that is wise enough to do that and skilled enough to do that. It might feel risky or feel dangerous to a leader to elevate somebody into a role where in some sense they are irreplaceable. And what do I mean by that? It's irreplaceable, meaning it's a combination of experience, perspective, very difficult combinations of skills to find, and allows them to have a unique outsized impact. And you are never going to find another person like this again. It's not going to happen. It might be scary to have that person in that role. Then there is risk. No doubt there's risk. But think about it from the other perspective too. There's also risk in not doing that, right? So what if you don't do that? That person wants to maximize their value. So they're looking for that organization that's going to figure out how to help them best exploit how much they matter to the world, right? And I mean exploit in a good sense, not a negative sense, right? To maximize it. They want the most earnings that they can get, right? So how do you do that? It's by capturing their human uniqueness in their role professionally and building something really special. And when a person does that, and that respect is shown to them, I find that they're very sticky to that organization, because where can they go where they can replicate that, right? That's a very special relationship, but it takes a lot of work to curate that. And once again, leaders, you got to be meeting one-on-one with your people to make that happen, right? So having people have mobility throughout your organization, move around in the organization, tremendously valuable, right? Bringing experience from other departments, other jobs, into new roles can be massively, massively rewarding and really encourage retention. I also want to say that, some turnover is good. It's not all bad. And I would highlight two types of turnover as good turnover. One is, people are going to leave your organization for good reasons, good people that you wouldn't otherwise want to lose. But, they need to move, they need to relocate, they need to pursue an opportunity, whatever it is, people who have done a great job and, it's time for them to go for some reason, need to be treated like alumni. When your organization, when your team sees you treat people who have performed well and send them off with love, with encouragement, with respect, with gratitude towards their contribution, that is such a morale boost for your organization. So celebrate those people, invite them back to the company parties, right? Do not, when that person resigns, do not walk them out the door. Do not disrespect them. There's such an opportunity to show your current staff how much you appreciate that person's contribution and that person's loyalty. And you also increase the chance that that person comes back someday. Maybe they need to go try out that new business or try out this job opportunity they got, or maybe they're going to move back to the area. Whatever it is, the chance that that person rejoins the organization is not zero. And this happens a lot in many organizations. So keep that in mind. I love the concept of alumni, people who have left on really good terms. For my organization, I love getting coffee with those people. I love hearing about the growth in their life and their career. It has been so fruitful and so rewarding to stay in touch with those people. The other type of good turnover is moving out underperformers. And this is an unfortunate part of business, but whether it's through mishiring or changes in people's lives or whatever it is, some people are just not going to perform to standard. And if you want to have a high performance organization, you cannot tolerate low performance. High performers will not tolerate it. And if you are the leader in the organization and you are putting up with low performance, you have to make a decision. Either your low performers are going to push out the high performers, or the high performers, which should be you, are going to push out the low performers. That is the way it works. A people work with A companies. B people work with B companies. And C people work with C companies. That is the reality, the hierarchy, the food chain, so to speak, of organizations. If you give lip service to being high performance, you have to be skilled at accountability, at performance coaching, performance leadership, performance accountability. And if somebody's not getting with the program and is not improving your customer's life at the end of the day and improving the lives of the people around them, they need to go. And that is a really important thing for them. They need that data point. They need to understand that they need to get better. And that kind of feedback of getting released from an organization after being coached, shouldn't be a surprise to them, but after being coached and worked with, then it's time to go, if that person's not improving. And that's going to be a morale boost for people who believe in the team, believe in the organization, the mission. It's going to show your loyalty and allegiance to what you say is really, truly important to you. So let's run through some strategies for retaining employees. These strategies touch a lot of other areas, but we're gonna focus on retention. Try not to get pulled into the other topics. Regular one-on-ones. Think of these like stay interviews, right? So you got exit interviews, which you should be doing whenever you have turnover. And let's talk about exit interviews. Exit interviews are one of the least appreciated tools you have for improving your organization. And the reason why they are least utilized is oftentimes people cannot pick out the meat from the bones in an exit interview, because sometimes when people leave, they are upset. And the feedback they give, the criticism they give is not going to be polite. It's not going to be happy. It's not going to be kind. It's might even be hostile, but you need to know. And even if you don't believe anything in the exit interview, you need to know that this relationship got soured in your team, under your watch, in your organization. That person got hired. There was a failure to learn from at some point. And so if from an exit interview, the only takeaway is like, well, we don't agree with anything they said, you're missing the point. The point is you failed to get alignment with that person. Where did you fail to get alignment? Where did you fail to understand them? Where did you fail to meet their expectations, right? Success is properly set expectations, and expectations are the breeding ground for, or unmet expectations are the breeding ground for resentment. Where did that happen, right? What can you do to more properly recognize what people's expectations are and meet those or decline to work with them? This is an ever learning, ever developing and growing process for any leader. So exit interviews for everyone, even if they're mad, maybe especially if they're mad. And don't make it contentious. Let them vent, empathize with them, understand that they're upset for a reason, and that's okay. It's okay to be upset, and that you're sorry that they're upset, and you want to learn from it. And your humility and vulnerability as a leader there, and listening and accepting that, will be a really critical factor to growing from it. But back from our tangent, stay interviews, right, are ongoing interviews with employees to understand why are they staying, right? And this is really closely related to a one-on-one. Like a one-on-one really should be, in a way, a stay interview. How's it going? What can I do for you? What's going well? What's not going well? Are you having any problems I can help you with? How's life, right? Those kind of questions can help somebody share what you need to know in order to help them better. So a closely related topic is what I call the R factor question. And this isn't I shouldn't say I called it. This is a tool I learned at Strategic Coach. But the R factor question is asking a person, and you can do this with anyone, work, employee, boss, spouse, fiance, whatever it is, right? It's asking what needs to happen in the next 3 years for you to be happy that we made this decision to work together, go on this date, whatever it is, right? Get married. And what you're asking to understand is, what's your concept of success long term? What's the criteria? What are the goals, right? And what you want to know is, like, what are those goals, so that I can either make a plan on how to help you achieve those goals, how I can be a part of that, or, is this realistic? Maybe I shouldn't be committing to this relationship because I can't meet those 3-year goals. It shows respect to the other party. It's going to give you information about what you need to help that person be successful. And so I really think the R factor question is valuable when figuring out how to build that alignment with someone to help them be long-term successful so that you can retain them. Once again, back to retention. Employee development. So what does this mean? I feel like this is like the word retention. This is like another one of those corporate buzzwords, right? It's human capital. It's employee development. What does this mean? People want to maximize the value that they get out of their life, right? In every way possible. Work is one of those ways. Employee development is really just helping people get more. The way that employees can get more is that they can contribute more. They need better perspective, they need better skills, they need better abilities in order to contribute more, in order to earn more, right? That's employee development. You want a high performing team, you got to have high performing people. Everybody's at a certain level today. Where are you going to be at tomorrow, in a month, in a year? What's that trajectory look like? And employee development is hopefully at your organization one where, if an employee thinks about where they're going to be at in 10 years, what they're imagining is this almost logarithmic growth pattern for themselves, where because I'm working for this leader in this organization on these problems, I am growing at a tremendous rate. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited what's possible. I feel proud of the work that I'm doing. I feel like I matter. I'm making a difference. That is what employee development is about. And so organizations who just hire people who are ostensibly qualified and then fail to recognize that that person, if that person's ambitious, wants to see an upward trajectory, maybe an aggressive upward trajectory, and the leader and the organization needs to provide a path for that ambition. Otherwise, the person's going to leave, right? They're going to find a leader who can better facilitate that growth and provide a greenhouse or an ecosystem for that person's work ethic and drive to manifest itself. One fundamental thing you have to do before you can do employee development as a leader is you need to develop yourself. It's not possible for you to, as a leader, coach your employees to be people that you are not, right? What do I mean by that? If you're not on a path of self-discovery, authenticity, vulnerability, humility, self-development, you can't help people on their paths. Now, you can tell them what to do. You can give them advice, but it's going to be hollow. It's not going to be as helpful, and it won't help you build respect. It requires real internal introspective awareness to help other people in their growth journey, because it's highly individualized. And once you realize as a leader how individualized your growth is to you and your goals and your personality and all of that context, then you have the capacity to do that with an employee and frankly help unlock what could be substantially more growth than even they were aware that they were capable of. And this is where you see employees grateful for leaders who push them a lot harder than what they thought they could be pushed, and without resenting it, right? Because it's like, wow, I grew so much, and it was maybe not without some pain, without some learning and painful reflection. But man, look at what I accomplished. Look what I earn now. Look what I do, right? The highest goal that any employee can have is to find a leader who can do that. And you really want to be that type of leader if you're really interested in retaining employees and developing a high quality team and going the distance, building a lot of momentum in your business. Another strategy for improving retention: recognition and appreciation. You get more of what you encourage. So when people perform well, do you recognize it? Do you see it? Do you call it out? Do you encourage it? Or, that's from really an abundance mindset. From a scarcity mindset, it's fear driven, right? So you're calling out and critiquing where things aren't good enough. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for a leader to do performance management, performance accountability, and have high standards, but you can do an incredible amount of performance management by letting people know how much you appreciate good performance, more so than how disappointed you are in poor performance. And there's a place for both, but you should be at least 70% on good performance. It's just more encouraging. It's just more helpful. Provide clear career paths. In small organizations, this is hard, but this is once again why it's important. Lots of one-on-one meetings, lots of understanding about where people want to take their careers. Find a way to maximize their impact on the organization by giving them a path for growth, right? That's the thing. Larger organizations oftentimes have very stratified growth paths. Most of the firms we work with are small to medium, so there's not as much of that. But, people need to know that there's a way to grow. And oftentimes, what leaders fail to give employees is clarity on this is the next step, maybe for you, right? Maybe it's not this way for every project engineer, but for you and this with your set of strengths, I want you working on this and I want you to work towards this promotion, right? This goal. So give people a clear path forward. Be wary of losing touch with their ambition. Let's talk about emotional intelligence in retention. It's a super category of a lot of things that we're talking about. One thing I've learned is that leaders who are not emotionally intelligent are reactive, they're defensive, they're small-minded, they are often trapped in their role, they're trapped in their business, they're trapped in their paradigm. They have very few ways of solving problems, and the range of people that they can be successful with is very narrow. And if we think of like an extreme case, if you've got a particularly toxic leader, it may be that the only type of person that they can be successful with is somebody who's willing to be abused, right? Which is like a whole different side of that trauma. The leaders who are introspective and doing the work, the emotional intelligence work, they are so much more skilled at meeting people where they're at, investing, being a leader worth following. My perception is a lot of people seem to think it's kind of this like fluffy, like this is how to be nice to everyone, this is how to be liked by everyone. And I think that really doesn't do it justice. I think emotional intelligence is about understanding what needs to be done to get things done with people. That means accountability, that means confrontation, that means conflict, that means getting to know people and interviewing. And if you've seen Dune 2, where, spoiler alert, but where Paul Atreides goes in and challenges the whole Fremen tribe, in my mind, is a pretty good demonstration of emotional intelligence, because he understood the human landscape and he understood how to navigate it, and he understood how to get the outcome that he was looking for. Whether that outcome was good or not, we'll find out in Dune 3. But the point I'm trying to make is emotional intelligence is not about being just warm and fuzzy. Emotional intelligence might be about being very acute in knowing how to be vulnerable, how to be relational, how to develop tensions and frameworks of accountability, and build high performance teams. If you haven't really looked into emotional intelligence and the brain science that is behind this concept, it's deep and it's a lifelong journey. And if you're a leader and you care about retention, you care about building a team with momentum, you need to be on that journey. Okay, here's another thought about onboarding and alignment and retention. Interviewing is really the start of the onboarding process. You may not hire them, but if you do hire them, onboarding starts in the interview. It's where you set the tone of the relationship. It's where you set pace and frequency for the relationship dynamic. It's where they start getting to know you and your goals. And if you think about alignment, alignment starts to some degree disconnected, right? They don't know you, you don't know them. And then as you interview, you become closer and maybe you decide to work together. But it's important to recognize that you've only covered this much ground, right? In the interview process. Like, you've met with them for what? Like maybe 10 hours total if you team interview and multiple interviewers, and you're thinking about aggregate time you spent. How much can you really know somebody in 10 hours, right? Like, the divorce rate is 50%. So those people had months and months and months, maybe years, to get to know each other. And, in a lot more contexts than you do, and they still break up. So don't delude yourself that you're gonna really know somebody in an interview process at a super deep level. They're going to start working for you. Okay, so they were here, now they're here. You interviewed them, you know more about them, you decided you want to work together, and that process of onboarding them, training them, building the relationship, culturally inculcating them, building respect, building loyalty is progressively moving your alignment closer and closer and closer, right? But you need to recognize that alignment is never perfect. You're not the same people. They have different goals, they have different opinions, they have different personalities and paradigms and philosophies. And one more reason why you should constantly meet with your people, you should be constantly be in communication, is because this alignment is a fragile thing. Don't assume that because they went through onboarding and went through training, now they're doing the job, maybe they're doing the job well, that it's not your job to carefully cultivate and curate that alignment and keep track of it, because sometimes people change. Sometimes people have paradigm shifts. Sometimes they have goal shifts, right? And things can fall out of alignment. And if that's the case, you need to know and you need to make the right decisions as a leader. I desperately hope that this video is helpful to you in helping you accomplish your goals of being a great leader, of maximizing the value to yourself and to other people, those relationships, and that you're a better force for good in the world. That you're making some child's life better because their parent is coming home from work feeling energized from work and not depleted. So I hope that you find freedom and abundance in this training, and I'd really love to know your thoughts on what I've shared here. If you disagree, that's wonderful. I would love to learn from you. So I hope you can share your thoughts. I'll participate in the comments. And if you appreciate this content and you think other people should have access to it, if you subscribe and you like this content, that's going to help the algorithm, and it'd be a real compliment to myself. So thank you. Thank you for coming on this journey with me and working on yourself. That's awesome. If you would like to work with an insourced fractional construction recruiting team that just focuses on construction, and particularly managerial level hires, starting with project engineer on up, then contact me. Contact me for a free exploratory conversation. I'd love to help you grow strategically, sustainably. I'd love to help you improve your business. And so you can reach out at either my email, tj@ambassadorgroup.com, or my phone number is 415-262-4248. We're also going to have a link in the description for scheduling an exploratory call. It's got immediate access to my calendar and availability, and you can schedule there. And I'd love to have a low pressure conversation to see how we can create the most value together. Thanks.